5 Live Formula One.
Hello, I'm Ben Edwards. Welcome to our reaction of qualifying at Imola for the 5th Emilia Romagna Grand Prix. I am joined by ex-McLaren F1 mechanic Mark Priestley and by F1 correspondent for BBC Sport, Andrew Benson. And we have seen a really fascinating qualifying session today, as we kind of expected, because qualifying at Imola is also very, very important, as overtaking is extremely difficult, and Oscar Piastri was the man who got it right, despite the fact that on his very best lap he had to nip between some slower cars in the last section, and I wondered whether that was going to give him enough, but then when we saw the other times come in, it was enough. He held on to pole position.
Didn't he? Because it was only 34 milliseconds that he managed to snatch that pole position away from, as it was in the end, Max Verstappen. So Oscar Piastri delivering once again, like he has done on so many occasions already this year. He's won 4 out of the first 6 races, and he's now put himself in a very, very strong position to make that 5.
Absolutely, it's so impressive. And for McLaren, it's their first pole position at Imola since 2005. Of course, there was a big gap of Grand Prix taking place between the mid-2000s and then 2020. But Andrew, interesting that once again, Oscar Piastri has been the dominant force there at McLaren, beating Max Verstappen, who will join him on the front row. And Oscar's confidence just seems to be getting higher and higher at the moment.
He's putting in a very impressive season so far, isn't he? This is the 7th qualifying session. We've had 6 races so far. He's won 4 of them. This is his 3rd pole position. And I think the most striking thing is how he's turned the tables on teammate Lando Norris, who's down in 4th after today's qualifying session and sounding quite down on himself, just can't get those laps how he likes them when it really gets to the point where the drivers are pushing the cars to the very limit. Piastri, on the other hand, is really nailing everything, and he's setting himself up as a really formidable competitor. He's added that qualifying pace to the racecraft and incisive racing skills that he showed through last season at various points, and right now it's hard to see anybody beating him to the World Championship.
Well, we do know there is one particular person who might give him a hard time. That could be Max Verstappen again tomorrow with their run down into the first corner. But Oscar Piastri certainly delivered well today. Let's hear from him.
Oscar, mega lap, congratulations. Just talk me through that final lap when you saw all that traffic and it was all on the line.
Yeah, I was not going to be happy if that cost me pole, but in the end it was enough. The rest of the lap was really strong, and I was very happy with it. Just yeah, that was a bit of a spanner in the works, but the team did a great job of getting the car in a good window. It obviously wasn't an easy session with all the red flags, the delays, and just the tyres as well were not very easy to stay on top of. So we did a good job, and I feel like I found my feet nicely into Q3, and both the laps felt good, but the second one was very strong.
How much confidence can you take into tomorrow's race, not just in that lap, but the job you've kind of done all weekend really to build up to tomorrow's race?
I think, yeah, we're confident. Our race pace yesterday looked quite good. Obviously, getting a good start's going to be important tomorrow, but yeah, let's see. But no, feeling good. I think qualifying was where we felt we had some work to do yesterday, and I mean the car's been quick, but it's not been the most consistent. And I think today we did a good job of making it a bit easier to tame. So no, I'm excited for tomorrow.
So that was Oscar Piastri talking to Lawrence Barretto. And Mark, it's so impressive that he's got that confidence, kept it going. But the race, when it comes to getting off the line from pole position and knowing that your big rival, Max Verstappen, is right alongside, we've seen him deal with Max extremely well. And I do think Max actually knows that Piastri's not the easiest guy to attack. He's got to play it carefully himself.
Well, Max had a lot of experience last year going wheel to wheel with Lando Norris, didn't he? Oscar Piastri's teammate, as they were in the championship battle. And there were a number of races that were really sort of turned on their head at the first corner. And it was quite often it was Max Verstappen who came out of those battles on top. He almost got the upper hand on Lando, whether it was physically in the car or psychologically. He knew how to race Lando Norris. He hasn't got the same experience up against Oscar Piastri in exactly the same way. So I think there's an element of unknown. Oscar, very calm and controlled, seems to handle pressure incredibly well, as does Max Verstappen, but he's certainly also a guy who's willing to get his elbows out and fight for that position. So turn one, the opening couple of corners in the race tomorrow, going to be really intriguing because they could well have a massive impact on the rest of that race.
We saw it in Miami. We saw it in Saudi Arabia. Piastri he's read the rules. He knows exactly what they are. And he's so clinical and decisive in his racing. And in Jeddah, he put his car right alongside Verstappen at the start, gave Verstappen no option. Verstappen should have backed out of that move, but he tried to game the rules, and in the end, it didn't work out for him. And in Miami, the contrast between Norris and Piastri racing Verstappen was really quite striking. Piastri and Norris took about the same number of laps to get past Verstappen, but Piastri lost a lot less time because he didn't waste time making moves that weren't on. He only really went for it when he was really in a position to make the move stick. And Verstappen's now seen that happen in 2 races. It won't change anything about the way Max Verstappen races with him. But whatever happens tomorrow at the start, I would expect Piastri to do the same. If he's in a position to keep the lead, he'll keep it. If Verstappen, for some reason, gets a better start and gets up alongside him, he won't take a risk that sees him potentially go out of the race. He'll just sit back and hope that the race comes to him in another way.
And I think that's almost symptomatic of the difference in character between Lando Norris and Oscar Piastri, in that Oscar's very calm, he's very measured, very intelligent and switched on, and he does make those, he seems to be a very good decision maker in those, even in the high pressure situations. Lando Norris, what we're seeing is almost a little bit of, and I don't mean to be too critical of him because he's very much in the hunt for this championship still with a long way to go, but it's almost a bit of desperation creeping in where maybe it's the pressure of losing out consistently to his teammate, because that's a big no-no for any racing driver. In a year where he thinks the championship is there for the taking, and he could well be right, already it's his teammates getting the early advantage. So the little moves that Andrew's referring to there almost smack of a tiny amount of desperation where he feels like he's just got to do anything to find his way in front. And the sort of the opposing view on the other side of his own garage is that Oscar's a little bit more controlled in most of those situations.
Well, it will be interesting because Max Verstappen has a tremendous record at Imola. He's won the last 3 races here in 2021, 2022, and last year he beat Lando Norris by a tiny margin, but he held him off to the end. So he starts in second place, Max Verstappen. He is third in the championship, but still very much representing Red Bull in an extremely good way as he's still chasing yet another title. And we'll see how he goes over the course of the weekend. Let's hear from him.
Hey Max, considering where you started this weekend, you pretty pleased that the car was able to come alive through quali, and that at the end it looked like you were in the real fight for pole?
Yeah, I mean today was a lot more positive for us. I think I felt a lot more confident with the car. Just a lot more promising actually, and from that side I think we did a very good job. The only problem is that of course this weekend we ran one step softer on the compounds, and I think that actually hurt us a little bit. Just tires overheating too much when I really wanted to go for it. So sector 1 was good, but then I just ran out of tires.
How are you feeling about tomorrow's challenge and the prospect of taking the fight to Oscar and holding Lando back?
Yeah, it will be tough. I mean, I'm going to be realistic about that, but we still, we want to have a good start, good first corner, and then just see what we can do in the race. Because yesterday it was not very good, but I do think with the changes that we made on the car that will help anyway in the race. But it's going to be a tough battle, of course, because we know that normally in the race McLaren is even stronger than what they show in qualifying, just because of their tire management. But that's okay. I mean, we just have to keep working, keep trying to understand more what we need to improve on. And I think at least what we definitely did well this weekend is how we improved our car already. Now we just need to make sure that the tires are overheating a little bit less.
So Max Verstappen talking to Lawrence and telling us about the battle that is going to be coming up. Now, of course, Verstappen and Piastri on that front row. But what was also interesting about the second row, it is 2 British drivers, but it's not quite the order we expected initially, because suddenly George Russell managed to nip into third place, beat Lando Norris, and there was some clever strategy, if you like, going on from Mercedes. Because just tell us about it, Mark. There was a new tyre brought in this weekend, and that had a few effects, didn't it?
Well, there was a lot of intrigue coming into the weekend because Pirelli brought the C6 tyre, which is the softest in their range. It's new for this year. A lot of work done on that tyre on Friday in the practice sessions to try and understand it. No one had used it up until this point because they chose not to in pre-season testing. But actually, when it came to lap time, there wasn't a huge difference between the soft tyre and the medium tyre, which is the C5. Incidentally, the C5, which is this year's medium, was actually last year's soft. But the point is, there's not too much of a lap time difference. However, because we've got the C5, the medium, and then the hard, those are going to be the two race tyres for the Grand Prix. And so for most people, they had to use the soft tyres in qualifying, which is what you'd expect. But in the hands of the two Aston Martins, with Alonso and Stroll, because they were struggling a little bit, they're not necessarily front runners, they chose to take this alternate strategy, knowing that the medium tyre might even have been a tiny bit quicker in the conditions today, and they managed to deliver a really great lap time with that. Right late on in the session, Mercedes and George Russell, they reacted to that. They saw what had happened at Aston Martin and put a set of mediums on George Russell's car as well. He was the last man to cross the line in the session, and as you said, he delivered a lap time that's quicker than he'd been able to do on the soft tyre, and crucially quicker than Lando Norris was able to do, putting himself third on the grid. So there's a slight compromise with that strategy in that you've used up some of your race tyre performance for tomorrow, but it did give him a great grid slot.
That's a good point. And Andrew, of course, going racing, sometimes it is a little bit of a compromise in terms of taking the tyre, but in this case, it does look as though using that tyre and getting third place on the grid makes it worthwhile, having used a bit more of the medium than you would otherwise.
Yeah, and they're not the only team to do it. We'll get onto the Aston Martins in a minute, but they've also done a similar sort of thing. But the compromise is worth it. You know, it does put them on the back foot a tiny bit for the race. Russell mentioned it himself, but qualifying so important in Imola because overtaking's so difficult, and it looks like it's going to be a one-stop strategy, even with these softer tyres that Mark was talking about. So if you can take that risk and make it pay off, as Russell and the Aston Martins have, particularly Fernando Alonso, then it's worth it.
Okay, let's hear a word from George Russell.
Hey George, congratulations, another top three spot. That run on that medium right at the death, was that always the plan to give it a go?
Yeah, it was always the plan, to be honest, and it was so tight to get the lap in. I lost about a tenth down the straight because I had to make a gap to Sainz, and then Lance was coming through, and I was in first gear starting the lap, wheel spin. I was like, I've already lost it. But you know, P3 was a good result.
How pleased are you with the consistency that you've been displaying recently, and how much confidence? I know you're probably going to say the McLarens are too far ahead, but you know, you're doing the best you can, right, with what you've got, and hopefully another podium tomorrow.
It's my job is to drive this car as fast as possible, and I feel this season I've been doing a solid job. Still feel there's room to improve with myself, but you know, my goal is to get the best result possible week in, week out, and I think there's probably only been two sessions this whole season where I felt that I could have done a better job. That wasn't in Miami, so probably in Japan where I felt I underperformed. Miami, I was just off the pace. But you know, P3 again was a maximum.
So George, talking to Lawrence, the man who's going to be alongside him, of course, is none other than Lando Norris, the winner at the beginning of the year, but who's going through a little bit more of a difficult patch. And we've already talked about some of the ups and downs for Lando Norris. Fourth place on the grid is certainly not ideal. His main rival, his teammate on that pole position, his other big rival, Max Verstappen, on the front row. And it's not going to be easy for him from fourth place. And we certainly saw that bit of downside from him afterwards, didn't we?
Yeah, he's getting more and more despondent, more and more down on himself. You know, we know how hard he can be on himself at times. That's just part of his character. It's not necessarily a problem in itself, but I think there's a growing lack of confidence, if that's such a thing. His confidence is being ebbed away every time his teammate beats him. Not just because he's put it further up on the grid, which is really important, as you said, for tomorrow, but in the championship fight. Oscar Piastri's won 4 out of 6 races, and Lando's nowhere near that. Yes, he's still in touch, and there's a long way to go. This championship's nowhere near decided yet. But in Lando Norris's head, it's just another step of this championship that he sees within touching distance. This could be the one opportunity since he was a kid, of the one thing he's dreamt of for all of those years. He's got an opportunity in a car capable of doing it. He doesn't want to see that slip away, and that's in his head what he sees happening as his teammate gets further and further down the road.
Andrew, let's first of all hear what Lando Norris had to say after that qualifying, and then I want to get your opinion on how it's going for him.
It was good until the final 2 laps, just not quick enough, that's all.
Not quick enough because you pushed too hard, or you made some mistakes?
No idea, the lap time just doesn't come. I just, same answers every weekend. I mean, it's a regular thing, so I feel better until I get to it. Obviously just need to work on it a lot. It's just not good enough.
Tomorrow, race day, pace is generally much better. I know it's hard to overtake around here, but you're always good around here. Give you a bit of hope to recover onto the podium?
Yeah, but not a lot. I don't think our pace is that much better. I mean, it's definitely going to be better, I presume, than the others, but yeah, I'm here to win, and now I don't have much of a chance of winning, so if I can get on the podium, that would be nice.
That was Lando talking to Lawrence Barretto, and it wasn't an easy one, was it? Because you could hear from Lando the frustration. He's kind of just blaming himself. He's not blaming anybody else.
Yeah, I mean, that's good for Lando. That's what he's like. He wears his heart on his sleeve, and he's very open about struggles. He's not one of these people who tries to hide behind difficulties. And of course, the car is on pole, so he can't blame the car, and he's not the sort of person who would blame the car. What's happened this year, basically, is that the McLaren, with some of the changes that they've made to it, that have made it so quick, made it the car to beat, they've turned it into a car that has a little bit of mid-corner understeer. And he doesn't like understeer. So he's really struggling to... And not only does it have that mid-corner understeer, but Andrea Stella, the team principal, has been describing very openly to the media. His written media sessions are fascinating, by the way. I'd love the audience to be able to sit in on them because he's such a bright, eloquent guy. Anyway, he talks about how it doesn't give the drivers the cues that they want. People think that race driving is all about reaction. It's not. It's about anticipation. You'll know that, Ben, as an ex-driver yourself. If the car doesn't behave in the way that you expect it to behave at the key point in the corner when you're trying to take it to the absolute limit, it's very difficult for the driver to have the confidence that he needs to push right out to the edge. And that's what's happening with the McLaren. It doesn't behave in the way Lando wants it in the first place in terms of handling balance, and it doesn't give him the messages that he wants to be able to drive it in the way that he wants. On top of that, Williams... team principal James Vowles, interestingly, was saying earlier in the week at an event that I went to that the front tyres this year are a bit weaker than they were last year in comparison to in terms of the overall balance. So that's going to be exacerbating that problem. And so McLaren and Norris, they have to work their way through this problem and get to the point where he can have that confidence in the front of the car at the key point of the corner. The key thing for him now is to stay calm and just do the work. There's 24 Grand Prix this season. All sorts of things can happen. Yes, Piastri's building a very decent lead, and it looks like whatever happens tomorrow, whether he or Verstappen end up winning the race, he'll probably extend that advantage that he's got over Norris a little bit further. But Norris just has to keep in the game. Keep scoring the points. Don't do anything rash. Don't let his head get down, and hope that the car comes to him as the season goes on.
Well, it's going to be fascinating to see how it goes. Just going further down that order, it was very interesting to see Fernando Alonso qualifying just one place behind Lando Norris, and from what you were saying as well there, Andrew. And Mark, it's impressive that Aston Martin have made this move with his teammate Lance Stroll in the top 10 as well, so both of them in the top 10 for the first time this year.
Yeah, it's great to see. It's as a result of a combination of things. In no small part, I think, a number of upgrades they've brought to the car this weekend. They were struggling a little bit on Friday in the initial session to get those working, but I think between FP2, FP3 and the work they've done overnight, they've managed to unlock some of the potential of those new components. The car's definitely working a lot better today. So that was one thing that's taken a big step forward and is encouraging for everybody there. But also, as we mentioned earlier on, they took this this gamble in terms of running the medium tyre as opposed to the soft tyre throughout qualifying. They realised, as a number of teams did, that there was a lot more performance, or some more performance, in the medium tyre. But they had the sort of advantage of not having very much to lose by doing it. You know, they're not a front-running team. If you're the likes of McLaren, if you're the likes of Max Verstappen, to take a little bit of an unknown gamble like that, which, as we said, a slight compromise with your race pace as a result of using that tyre, you're less likely to do it at that end of the grid. So with Alonso and Stroll both making use of that, they were able to deliver a really good, solid lap time, and it's put them in a great position. Fifth on the grid for Alonso is a really, really solid result, and anything could happen from there.
And they're not the only team, Andrew, that's moving up the order. I mean, it's actually the first time we've seen Aston do it. It's not the first time we've seen Williams going well, because once again, we saw both of the Williams getting into the top 10 with Carlos Sainz 6th and Alex Albon in 7th. That's impressive.
Yeah, if it hadn't been for Alonso, they'd have been in the positions that they had on the grid in Miami last time out, actually. So it just underlines the impressive job that Williams have done, in turning their team around. They're actually focusing on 2026 in very much the same way as Aston Martin are. But the changes that they've been making to the team internally have fed into this year's car, and it's made a big step forward for them. Just on the Aston Martin, I think it's been a really positive weekend for them all round. You know, they've been smart with the strategy with the tyres. They've slightly given themselves a potential difficulty in the race because they've used one of their 2 sets of hard tyres to ensure that they got into qualifying in a place where they could use the mediums in the way that they did. Obviously, Mercedes have made a similar decision by running the mediums in Q3 with George Russell. But for them, I think I'd like to focus on them a little bit more than Williams. We know Williams are doing well this year. Aston Martin have been having an absolutely dire season. That was the slowest car in Miami 2 weeks ago, easily. You could see that. It was very obvious just from the qualifying results. They didn't qualify last, but what I mean by that is that their fastest driver was slower than the fastest drivers of all the other teams. So, and of course the fastest driver was Alonso, as he is again here. Let's not forget the guy's 43 years old. There he is, 5th on the grid. The car's come good this weekend with some upgrades which they've dropped a hint were influenced by Adrian Newey, their new managing technical partner, as he's called, who joined the team in March. A new floor, a new top bodywork. And Alonso's keeping his feet on the ground. He's saying, look, is Imola, we would have expected to be a bit better here. We were talking about this, Ben, weren't we, off mic before the session started, about how the car was quite quick in Suzuka, for example, where he just missed out on a top 10 finish. All the cars finished, and I think he was 11th in the end, Alonso, after quite a strong performance over the weekend. It was also, again, decent in Jeddah, where, again, he just missed out on the points because all the cars finished. But another strong weekend for them. So he's saying, look, we don't know for sure that this is a step forward, but there's no way an Aston Martin would have been 5th on the grid. And it's not just about the tyres, because I don't think there was much to do in terms of pace difference between the soft and the medium. It's just that the medium was as quick as the soft, unusually. So it's a great step forward for them. And so I think you can say the upgrades have definitely worked. And from their point of view, it finally is some light at the end of the tunnel of their season, because it was looking pretty dark for them. Alonso had been saying we're never going to score points, but now he said unless something goes wrong, he's definitely going to score points tomorrow. So it's nice. I mean, I think everybody likes to see Fernando Alonso close to the front, don't they? And because he's such an iconic figure, and he doesn't mess about in any way, verbally or on the track. It's a very positive news story for Aston Martin this weekend.
Absolutely, and as you say, he may well get his first points of this season. Further down that top 10, we saw Isaac Hadjar, who was 9th fastest. He did a very good job as one of the rookies as well. Pierre Gasly, 10th fastest. He'd shown good pace in the Alpine throughout the course of the weekend, got into that top 10. But one of the big shocks, Mark, was that neither of the Ferraris made it into the final part of qualifying.
Yeah, at their home race in front of the Tifosi. So, yeah, really not a good weekend so far. And you say it's a shock. And it is, of course, on many levels, but I think it's also the genuine pace of the car. It's not like they made mistakes. It's not like they sort of cocked something up. I think you listen to both drivers. They gave it everything. They tried everything they could, and they just could not get the tyres switched on. They couldn't deliver pace. And unusually, when they bolted brand new tyres on in the final run, they went slower. They couldn't find any more lap time. It was the cars around them that many of them who put the new tyres on and did go even quicker, managed to get them working. For some reason, Ferrari can't figure out why a set of new tyres are not delivering the uplift in performance that it should do and that many others are experiencing.
Absolutely. Well, Hamilton was just a fraction slower than Leclerc. Let's hear now from Lewis Hamilton.
Hey, Lewis. Obviously frustrating to have that kind of performance in front of your home fans here at Ferrari. Just explain to me how the car felt and whether or not that was what you could do, and that's where the car's at, I guess, at the minute.
I don't think that's where the car's at. Obviously, I think we made some really good progress this weekend, and it doesn't show in the results, which is why generally I'm devastated to see us get knocked out there. The car, I feel like we made all the right changes. For some reason, we just didn't switch on the tyre at the end there, and I think it's the same for Charles. So we have to look into that, and it makes the race a lot harder for us, but we'll keep pushing.
How much can you take then from the car feeling better? At least I know it didn't come together today, but that's progress, right? And it feels like if you can make some progress from Miami to here, that is, you go to the right direction, even if the result isn't there.
I think so. I think we've made some improvements this weekend. It's just, as I said, it's not showing for some reason. So I got not much else to add to it. So
You haven't got any ideas why yet?
I have no idea why all of a sudden we couldn't get through it. No.
So Lewis Hamilton talking to Lawrence, and yes, interestingly, both Ferraris outside that top 10. Interestingly, though, Andrew, Leclerc had a slightly different reaction to being outside the top 10.
I was going to say that, Ben. It was very interesting hearing the contrast between the two Ferrari drivers. Hamilton saying fundamentally quite positive things. He thinks we've made a step forward with the car, but we just haven't quite delivered it. I'm not quite sure why. Leclerc was very, very negative. We are just nowhere at the moment, was the standout quote for me from him. There's not enough performance in the car. We need to be better. I cannot do miracles. This is where the car is. I guess Hamilton's doing the sort of statesman role, and Leclerc maybe just, speaking the reality. And I don't know why they can't get the new tyres to work. It's the second race in a row that's happened. Fred Vasseur, the team principal, was talking about it after the race in Miami. Vasseur's been putting a positive spin on this, obviously, all season, as he would. He's been trying to say, look, we're actually in a very similar place to Mercedes and Red Bull. That's who we're racing with. Everyone is behind McLaren. But that's just not true, is it? Because you've got to qualify well to race well. And you can't, tomorrow they're starting 11th and 12th. This is a track where overtaking is notoriously difficult. They've got a very difficult race ahead of them. And they've got to sort out this tyre thing in qualifying, because otherwise this is going to be a really difficult season for them. And Fred Vasseur particularly is going to start coming under some severe pressure.
Yeah, and I think the biggest problem in all of this is that I don't think they have any real understanding of why they can't get these tyres to work. So it's not even like they got a very clear idea of what's wrong. There's something in the pipeline and it's on the way, and it'll, at some point it'll get fixed. I think they're scratching their heads. They're really struggling to understand it.
It's actually really interesting because tyres have been a bit of a story for them over the last 2 or 3 years. There have been seasons where they've been good in qualifying because they've got the tyres to heat up quickly, and then bad in races for exactly the same reason. Then they've had seasons where they've been less good in qualifying because they can't get the tyres up to temperature, and then good in races, which was kind of last year. The whole point of this year was that they were hoping to maintain the momentum that they ended last year with, where they very nearly beat McLaren to the Constructors' Championship in Abu Dhabi, let's not forget. But they haven't done that. McLaren have made a significant step forward with their car. They've taken some risks on design to do that, particularly with the front suspension and various things there in terms of the keeping the aerodynamic platform of the car nice and stable. Ferrari haven't been able to follow suit, and they're still struggling with tyres, but they've lost ultimate performance in the car. There are upgrades coming, though, so it's not like it's the end of the road for them, and they're hoping that there'll be a big reset around the Spanish Grand Prix in 2 weeks' time, when there's a rule change which should affect front wing flexibility. They think that they've been suffering compared to McLaren, particularly on that technology, and that they think there'll be a reset. That's Vasseur's word that I'm quoting there in the field. McLaren disagree. They say it's going to make no difference at all. So we're going to find out in 2 weeks' time who's right.
Absolutely. Well, interesting series of races because, of course, Monaco's coming up next, which is where Leclerc won last year. But he's going to need a bit more qualifying pace if he's going to be able to repeat that. Just a couple of incidents today, Mark, that I wanted to talk about. Franco Colapinto, he spun out his car first time back in Formula One this year. He's driving for Alpine. So that was a shame that we saw him crash out. But it was even worse seeing Yuki Tsunoda crash out in a big way in the first part of qualifying.
Yeah, so for Colapinto, he's been brought in to replace Jack Doohan, who started the season for Alpine. And just, I guess, Jack Doohan didn't do a terrible job, make no mistake, but he maybe wasn't consistent enough in terms of putting whole weekends together. The team needed somebody to come in and steady that ship a little bit, deliver points, maybe not necessarily match Gasly, and certainly not in this shorter time frame, but at least have a good, clean, consistent weekend. And of course, Colapinto putting it in the wall today has done the opposite of that. So that's a really not the way he or anyone would have wanted to start his career with that team. But with Yuki Tsunoda, one of the biggest crashes I've seen, I think any of us have seen for a long, long time. He went in very, very hard in the first part of qualifying, got over the curb, unsettled the car, and as it landed after a bit of a jump, getting some full air, I think, landed, stepped over into the gravel, the wheels dug in at maximum speed, really, and flipped the car over into a complete pirouette where he hit the barriers, shot himself up in the air and came down in an almighty mess. luckily for both of those two drivers, they both walked away unscathed, which is obviously the most important thing. But in the same way that Red Bull need a driver, and they've been searching for one for quite some time, who can match or get somewhere close to Max Verstappen, they've got the same problems over and over again, haven't they?
They certainly have. No, it's an interesting one for Red Bull. They've got Max Verstappen on the front row looking to try and take another victory tomorrow at Imola, but Yuki Tsunoda, he'll be right down at the back on a rebuilt car for the start of the Grand Prix. But there is so much to look forward to. The battle between McLaren and Verstappen for Red Bull, with Russell up there as well, and with Fernando Alonso for once being in that top 5. There's lots to enjoy. We will have full coverage on Sports Extra with our live coverage of the race from 2 p.m. in the afternoon. And I do hope that you can join us for that. This has been an IMG production for BBC Radio 5 Live.